For the past 15 years, I've been a writer, an author. I've written for Over the Road magazine, monthly articles, and 2 books under my own personal name. The great thing about writing is, if you write something and you don't like it, you can just rewrite it. A podcast, obviously, is completely different. If you say something you don't like, you either have to redo the whole thing or make corrections. I've chosen to make corrections because I get passionate about what I'm talking about. And to get passionate about taxes, it's kind of rare, and you may want to listen to it. In my opinion, still, it's very interesting. If there is something that is in error, I will correct it. Realistically, I like the idea of just being authentic. I may change my style later on, but for now, I enjoyed doing it, and I feel comfortable with it.
Welcome to Making Your Miles Count production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scheper.
So here we are, Making Your Miles Count, and this particular podcast series is on my first book, Make Your Miles Count, Taxes, Taxes, Taxes. We're going to take it in small sections, a little bit at a time, chapter by chapter. We'll go through a little bit of an introduction, maybe why I wrote the book, and then also each individual chapter. First of all, I'd like to introduce my 2 guests, at least for this section. Peter Funk and Alan Hebert. They're, I guess, would be my co-hosts. I've known both of them probably for over 50 years. We haven't been, close friends for 50 years. We've had lives go in different directions and it's come back again. But I went to elementary school with you.
Yep. We
went to different schools. 50 years. Boy, I didn't think I was that old. I got to get younger friends. But anyway, Peter and his wife are long-distance truck drivers and been our clients, actually, for a number of years. And Alan is a business associate. We're not partners. We have never done any joint ventures. But probably if I ever would go into a joint venture, I'd probably go with you. No offense.
No, none taken. None taken.
But I'm just shy of partnerships. Maybe I'm too much of a control freak. Maybe not.
Maybe.
Okay, fair shot.
Just want to be in charge.
Unless I'm at home, then I'm no longer in charge.
Yes.
But anyway.
That's the best place to be in charge.
Oh, you got a contrarian. Ooh. Good for a real man.
Well, not in charge. No. Just take leadership.
Take leadership. Okay, sure. Chapter 1, tax evasion versus tax avoidance. This has to do with taxes in, I guess, either a free market, a free country, when it really comes down to it. One of my favorite movies is The Firm, and I quoted it in chapter 1. Gene Avery and Tom Cruise were having a conversation, or actually Gene
Hackman, is it?
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman?
I think it's Gene Hackman.
Okay.
Gene Hackman, yeah.
Okay, Gene Hackman. That's right, too. He said, pop quiz, what is the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion? And he says, A, 5 to 10 years, B, whatever the IRS says it is, C, is a smart lawyer, or D, all of the above. And he goes about talking to Tom Cruise, who was in the other room, finding out that he just joined a firm that was dealing with the mob, talking about a good lawyer or accountant, I guess, whatever you would look at it as. A good lawyer knows the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Canada has I guess you would call it, there's a specific word for it, I can't think of it, what the name of it, but it's a voluntary, not a voluntary submission of taxes, but everybody has to do it, but you have to do it yourself, or you have to get somebody to do it. Canada Revenue Agency doesn't come in and evaluate things. You have to report.
Take the initiative.
Yeah, you have to take the initiative. The majority of Canada and United States are both in that way. So when it really comes down to taxes, we present it the way we want to present it. And realistically, I guess to a certain degree, it's either up to an accountant or a lawyer or whoever that you choose to assist you in that process. But there are some people who don't pay any taxes at all, or they try not to. We're talking about, what do they call it? Common law guys, and what's the other?
Civil law?
What do you call it? Sovereign citizen. When somebody's a sovereign citizen, actually Canada and U.S. both have these, I guess, movements or whatever. I actually mention it in the book, talking about people, because I've known about this for a good 30 plus years, where individuals say, you don't have to pay any personal income tax, blah, blah, blah. And you just, use common law, or you use this or use that, and you got to go through this. You have to be educated how to, respond to either the RCMP or Canada Revenue Agency or whatever. Well, this has been around for 30 years. It's starting to come back into Canada again. There's a lot more teaching, especially since COVID. Maybe everybody has more time on their hands and all these restrictions and mandates and whatever. People are starting to push back. And I'm not a big fan at all of people not paying taxes at all. And this whole thing that I knew about 30 years ago coming back into circulation again, just on principle alone, if somebody says, I'm not paying any tax at all, it's not the way we want to present ourselves as a Canadian citizen. Because, there's a lot of services that we get. Well, what, everybody else is going to cover us for it? If I'm not paying any taxes, that's not fair to, as a citizen, I think when it really comes down to it, we have an obligation to pay taxes. We don't have to pay, everything that we have, of course, but we do have to grapple with the whole aspect of taxes.
Oh, just one comment. Okay, when we're talking common law, we're not talking about relationships here.
No,
yeah, because that can be
that's entirely different type of taxation.
We're talking about the type of laws that govern.
Yeah.
The country, right?
Yeah. I actually have a relative who is very much into this common law and doesn't pay taxes and stuff like this. Realistically, if you want to build after-tax wealth, or you want to build wealth so that you can retire, well, you cannot follow these teachings.
Yeah.
Because you won't end up with a bank account. You won't end up with insurance. You won't end up with medical care, anything. Just your medical number. You need to, if you break your leg, what are you going to?
You have to be a citizen.
Yeah.
You have to.
I do know. Can't remember. One of us was talking about somebody who collected Canada Pension Plan and still didn't pay any taxes. Well, that's double dipping, or not double dipping. That's taking from one hand and then ignoring the other. That's.
He might say, well, he paid into it, and so he was just getting back what he had put in, right? Kind of like a savings account kind of a thing that the government held. But beyond that, if he would then not use the medical system and not use the highways and not use any of the benefits, if you're not paying any taxes, would you have the right to use any of the provisions that the government has done over the hundreds of years?
100 years, Like I would agree. I know from a tax perspective, prior to World War I, the United States only operated on tariffs. That's their only cash flow. That they didn't have any kind of taxation aspect of it. And I'm probably pretty close to Canada. Probably operated mostly like that as well. And then things started. There was income tax because of World War I. And then World War II, and it just escalated, not necessarily because of wars, but just because more and more services needed to be provided with and stuff like that. It's reasonable for taxation, but there does come a point in time where a bureaucracy just grows for the sake of growing. And as some of the most inefficient organizations on the planet are government. They just grow another layer of bureaucracy because nobody stops them. Nobody makes them accountable for anything. And I think that's very much where we are in Canada, where there comes a point in time where you can't just throw more money at the government and think that we're going to be getting better, because realistic, it just goes into a general fund, and they.
So you're definitely a proponent of small government, having government.
Yes.
Right. We need government, but
fair taxation.
Fair taxation, but a small government. Not that the government does everything for the citizens and everybody just does whatever the government comes up with, and if they suggest you pay more in taxes, you just yes, whatever you ask.
It does require us as Canadian citizens to take responsibility for our personal life.
Exactly.
Not just medical or anything like it, but actual retirement. A lot of people, like 60% of Canadians, the only retirement plan they have is their house being paid for.
And CPP.
And CPP.
Yes.
And so they become emotionally, psychologically dependent on, what's the government going to give me next month, kind of a thing. And that, realistically, if you want true freedom, you gotta change the way your mind is you cannot rely on government, because they are not a very good supplier of much of anything, whether it's medical care or, for that matter, retirement. Is something that we have to take responsibility for. And if we want to build good after-tax wealth so that we can retire with dignity and not, eat dog food to survive, kind of a thing, we have to take responsibility for
take
our
ownership of it.
Yeah, for sure. It is our responsibility to arrange our taxes in such a way as to minimize it. That's our responsibility. Did you know that in Australia, it's actually illegal to do that? Even though they are from Commonwealth country, if it's found out that you made certain choices in order to minimize your taxes, that's called tax evasion in Australia. In Canada, no. You can arrange yourself in such a way that you pay
You can legally minimize your taxes.
Yeah. Not every country is as free as Canada, but it's certainly... it's good to know that we have a choice. What my book basically talks about is non-taxable benefits, the introduction of it and how to utilize it and stuff like this. It requires work, effort, and intensive choice to make that decision, because there are disadvantages and costs associated with it, but then there's huge benefits for it. So you have to make that cognitive choice. Okay, I'm going to do this, and you use this system in order to minimize taxes.
I'm going to do the work,
Yeah.
but I'm going to get the benefits.
Yeah. Do the work, follow the plan, and utilize it. So it's available for Canadians. It's certainly not the easiest and first choice. The easiest way to become an independent operator is just self-employed. Just sign up a GST number on your have everything put into your personal account and just pay whatever the taxes are. But using non-taxable benefits, that requires significant hoop jumping, and you have to follow the rules that are required. Certainly, it's not impossible. You learned it. It only takes
Very well.
2-3 months. And once you're in that cycle, you go, oh, is that it? Yeah. Oh, then it's a piece of cake. Then you can actually physically see what you're paying taxes on and what you're not paying taxes on. And I like it. It's quite exciting, because I'm not a big tax person.
You don't love paying taxes.
Love paying taxes. No,
I don't think anybody does.
I grew up in a house that my dad, I don't want to say anything negative against him, but he did not like taxes. And the word audit scared the living daylights out of
It still does.
Yeah. and I started into accounting. You start an accounting firm, eventually, sooner or later, you're going to get audited. Like you or your clients are going to get audited. And I was paranoid every single time I got audited. What's going on? What are they doing? Are they coming to get me? And it was terrible. You emit this fear, and the auditor, who's just there generally, he's doing their job, and he looks at you and you go, well, okay, this guy's hiding something.
He must be.
And it's a self-fulfilling
why is he so
prophecy.
great?
Yeah.
Why is he so nervous?
Yeah. Is he going to find what? What am I going to find? So they look twice as hard and stuff. It was a terrible situation to be in. What I ended up, and I realized that I was looking bad to these auditors. I had to sit down and I said, okay, I have to change my mental mindset. What I told myself is 95% of all auditors are just there to do a job. They're, they'll stop for a coffee break, stop for lunch or whatever. They're just doing a job to make sure that things are done appropriately. You don't have to worry about those at all, because we're not hiding anything. We're following the rules, so everything should be fine. It's the 5%, maybe even 2 or 3% that are a little bit hyper-aggressive, maybe
power
hungry. And some of them are just a little bit loony, and come up with some of the most bizarre stuff, because auditors have a great deal of autonomy.
Yes.
They can go open up and do a lot of stuff. We have met a few of those. Canada Revenue Agency, actually all government, allows ways to get around some things, and you can go through appeals process, and finally you can clear it clear things up. There is a way. But that mindset of changing from they're out to get me, to you know what, they're just doing a job. And at the end of the job, they go home to their family and have a normal life. That's probably the best attitude to have. It took me probably about 1.5 to 2 years before I finally fully relaxed and was able to do it. And I think a lot of independent operators, if they're listening, if somebody says you're under audit, don't panic. I mean, unless of course
unless you've intentionally done something wrong,
you've been lying or deceiving or something like that. But if you've done everything right, you should not have to worry. You really, really should not have to worry. It's just one of the things. Actually, in our firm, 50% of the clients who get audited don't even know they're audited. We just handle it, put everything through and everything. They don't even know it. And because it's very routine.
They do let them know, because we were audited, I think, 3 times in the last 8 years or so. And we got a letter from Revenue Canada stating that we had given you the authorization to work on our behalf.
So when it comes to tax evasion and tax avoidance, we have the control to decide how we want to present it and the like. A really good example is, or a really good perspective to have is, even though we hire an accountant to do something, in the end, we are going to be responsible. And that means we should understand it. If you don't understand something, then don't sign it.
Or ask questions.
Yeah, you ask questions until you get the answers that make sense to you. I've seen too many people come in and just say, look, I don't want to pay a penny of taxes. Here's my paperwork. I'll see you next Thursday. Well, that doesn't work out. They have to understand that at some point in time, there is taxes to be paid, unless they don't make any money at all, kind of a thing. But it's
actually a good thing to pay taxes, because that means that you made some money.
You're making money. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So back to your initial question, tax avoidance versus tax evasion. The difference, and what is legal and what is not?
Lying is not
it's not legal.
It's not legal. I've been in the industry long enough to know, and I've seen small, basement bookkeepers or strip mall bookkeepers who lie. It doesn't occur very often, but occasionally it comes across, and sometimes it's just flat out lying.
Yes.
And
that's illegal.
That is illegal. Here's the thing. If you hire an accountant that lies for you, that does not necessarily mean that you're off the hook.
No. Because you've authorized it.
You've authorized it. And in Canada, there are, I'll call them just CPAs. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of CPAs, but we'll call them CPAs, which is a designation. And then there's a lot of tax preparers who don't have a designation.
Yeah, and bookkeepers.
The vast majority of them are not designated. A CPA can be legally held responsible for an error, but it's a little bit rare. But any basement bookkeeper or anyone who's not designated, I have not heard of a single single case that they were held responsible. In the end, the taxpayer is responsible.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of liability. But going back to the CPA being liable, probably the most the biggest case of that was Arthur Andersen and Enron. When Enron went, it was billions of dollars, and they basically lied on their statements, and billions of dollars disappeared. Arthur Andersen was the accounting firm that represented him, and it basically wiped out the entire accounting firm. Okay. Yeah. Now that was a very big thing. Now, an independent operator who has one truck driving it himself, there's just no way that the courts are going to make, if there was lying occurred, I can't see that a CPA is going to be held liable for anything like that. It's just not even worth the case. There's way too many outs on that. It's not a big enough case. So we have to understand that just because, let's say, we're incorporated and we got shareholders and liabilities and stuff like this, all associated in and out of the corporation, that a CPA is going to suddenly be the the savior in there or be held liable for something like that. The business is just way too small. Canada Revenue Agency views any business that has less than $5 million of revenue in a year as a small business.
Correct.
So a single independent operator,
He's not at that level.
He'll never get to that point. There's not enough miles in a day that you could travel for that. So we're a small business, and so we fly under the radar an awful lot.
So back to my question that I had before, avoidance versus evasion. So you can avoid taxes legally.
Legally, absolutely.
That's by using your non-taxable benefit.
Yes.
Evading taxes is a different thing. That's where the line comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes illegal if you intentionally evade paying taxes that you rightfully should pay.
Yes. And that
Is
would
that
be
correct?
falsifying yes.
Yeah.
It would be clear like falsifying records.
Or
And
falsifying and or not filing.
not declaring.
Not
Okay.
declaring,
Not filing is actually not tax avoidance.
Because you haven't said that you're not paying.
You haven't
or
said
you haven't
what you
lied.
have and
You
what
just
you-
haven't submitted the information.
Yeah,
Right.
That's a little
Right.
bit different situation. I know a guy who who files his personal income tax return once every 10 years. It's a
As long as he doesn't make any money.
well, he does make money,
And then he has a lot of penalties to pay.
There's a whole bunch of backstory to it because his wife is in gambling addict and stuff like this. So it's a very difficult situation, and CRA knows about it. It's all in the notes. They know about it. They have a lien on the house.
Okay.
And he can't sell the house or finish something.
Not
They're
a
going to get
not a
their
happy
money.
story.
Yeah, it's not a happy story. They're going to get their money, but they don't chase after him or anything like that, which has always baffled me. But he files once every 10 years, and which is
So
fairly
how do they
bizarre.
get away with it? I know a person that hasn't filed for 12 years already, and they just haven't filed. They work every day.
Do they have a T4?
Yeah, they have a T4. Yeah, they were.
Because they're working for someone.
Yeah, this person's working for somebody,
But they just haven't filed.
but just haven't filed at all.
Generally speaking, if the correct amount is taken off of a paycheck, they've already paid it. It's been submitted, and so in theory, there is nothing due.
Yeah.
It
In
could
fact,
even be a little bit of
in
a
fact,
return.
exactly. In most cases, when
Especially if it would be a truck driver.
No, it's not a truck driver, but
Oh,
but that would also be tax avoidance, wouldn't it?
no, they've already paid
No,
taxes.
Failure to file is a different than tax
Oh, I
avoidance.
see.
Because
Okay.
they've taken the taxes off. Every check they're taking the taxes
Yeah.
off, right?
Right. Yes.
So they've actually been paying the taxes the entire amount. They just haven't reported.
Right.
And if they would report, they might even get money back.
Which I know this person would.
So that's not avoidance
They're not running after people like that.
or evading, I should say. It's not
Okay.
neither.
It's
Okay.
we've had clients come in and for various reasons, and some of them are actually pretty good reasons. They haven't filed for 5 or 7 years or something like that, and we go through all of the records, and they actually get returns under most circumstances, and under a couple of circumstances they owe, and it balanced out to very little. Very little, if anything, that they pay. So it's usually sometimes it's even refund. And Canada Revenue Agency understands that. Now, if a person was self-employed
That means that
for
they
10
haven't-
years, that's a completely
that's a different
thing.
story.
Completely different thing because it's failure to file, but
It's deemed that it's not
then
only just
you're actually
intentionally
probably-
not paying
Yeah.
taxes, that you're rightfully, that's evading taxes.
if you actually made $100,000, but you only claimed that you made 20, that's a big problem. I know of somebody who did their own personal income tax returns for 3 years, and they claimed they lost money for 3 consecutive years. And when they submitted, first of all, they submitted it all within a couple of months for 3 years. And then what it affected, first of all, they had a huge jump in child tax as it went through the system. And then, but it flagged an audit. And then they got a little bit panicky. They came to us and they said, this is what we filed. And we looked at it back and forth and, oh my goodness. They submitted things like hairdress appointment and nails and dog food and Walmart and Superstore and all of their food and everything. Everything went through, and they ended up, instead of losing $25 $25,000 a year, they ended up making anywhere between $60,000 and $75,000 a year.
Now they owe
Wow.
taxes.
Yeah, now they owe taxes big time. They asked, what do we do? I said, number one, you are poached.
Yeah.
You have lied to them,
Yes.
and now you
gonna pay
are
them.
at their mercy. If they throw the book at you, you're going to jail because you lied to them. And I said, what you do is you throw yourself on their
the
mercy,
mercy.
right, and get a loan for whatever it is that they say, because there's going to be penalties and interest and everything.
Yeah.
Because it's better, really, it's better not to file than to lie. It was a terrible situation.
Yeah.
And I just gave them the advice. Lying is never good.
Yeah.
It's never good. Even if somebody lies for you,
You're just as guilty.
You're just as guilty, and it comes back big time.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.